In this video I'm going to be showing you how you can create a functional elevator system in Godot. So as you can see in this demo, I come in the elevator, I press the button, the door closes, and then there's like a small transition with a little camera shake and everything. And then the door opens and I'm at a different scene. Now it's completely dark here. So yeah, let's get right into it. So let me just show you the main idea behind this. So the way I implemented it is that I have the different levels that I want the elevator to go between. And all of these are stored in an array. And what happens each time the player presses the button is that we have our elevator here, and first of all, the first level is loaded, it's right here. And once the player presses the button again, it gets unloaded and goes to the second level. That one gets loaded, and so on. It goes to the third one, that one gets loaded, and so on. Now, there are two ways to go about this, loading different scenes. Because, first of all, if you just load a new level, it might not be exactly in front of the elevator. You know, it might just spawn right over here. There are two ways of going about bringing them in sync. One of them is bringing the elevator to the map. This is not the approach I chose, because this way well, first of all, you need to move the elevator, you also need to move the player and all of that. I went in, and also in my game that I'm doing, the elevator is almost always there in the game, so I chose not to move it. The other approach that I went with, that instead of moving the elevator, I moved the whole map right in front of the elevator. And you see, the thing is that also on different floors, you might want the elevator to be at different spots. So the way I implemented it is that each time a new floor gets loaded, it checks if the floor has a so-called elevator marker. It's just basically a marker 3D that I chose, a point in space, for where the elevator should be when the level is loaded. So for example, in my scene, it's right here. Let me just show you in Godot. As you can see, here is a little marker 3D called elevator marker, and this is where the elevator should be once the level is loaded. So in my implementation, the elevator is not moving, only the things around it are moving. First of all, I instantiate the outside level, the new floor, and then I translate it so that the elevator will be exactly where this elevator marker should be. So the whole map moves right over here. So the elevator marker will be right where the elevator is, and then the new floor will be right around here. So let's get to the implementation of how this works, from the moment the player presses the button. So I won't get into the interaction system and all of that. Maybe I could do a separate video on that, you know, how you can press a button. But first of all, the player presses the button, and this activates a function call. And this is inside of the elevator script. So what this does is it first checks two conditions: if the player is in the elevator and if the player is already transitioning. Because we don't want to do the transition if the player is not in the elevator, you know, so he can't press the button outside of the elevator, or if he's already going to another level. Because if you don't check this, then it will just, you know, the player will be able to spam the button and go from the first floor to the very last. And then there are some other things that are not very important. This is more, you know, specific to my game. And if you're interested, this is a game I'm making. It's called The Final Shift. It's kind of like a horror type game where you're a janitor and you go about cleaning different floors. And each time, you know, as you go with the elevator, the floor suddenly changes. There's some spooky elements, and I think it's pretty fun. And there's also like a story behind it and all of that. It will be soon up on Steam. But anyway, getting back to the video, if these conditions are correct, and in my game, as I said, you have to collect trash, so if everything is collected, we can call the transition function. There are two kinds of transitions, but that's not really important right now for the basic functionalities. So in the transition functions, we check if we're already transitioning. If so, we return. And then here are basically all of the effects, you know, the doors closing, the little turbulence sound. We get a random wait time. And the small shake that you've seen, I've done that with the Phantom Camera add-on, which I highly recommend you to check out. It's a great add-on. You can make all sorts of camera effects, transitions, and all sorts of cool stuff. It's a great add-on. Maybe I'll make a video on it if you want to, but I won't get into it right now. So the main thing is this line over here. Global.gameControl.load next scene. And what this does is this uses a global script or an autoload. If you haven't heard about these yet, it's basically like a singleton. You have one instance of this script in the whole game, and you can access it from every node. It's very useful if you want some kind of functionality that is easy to access and you will reuse throughout the whole game, or any kind of variable you want to reuse in the whole game. So let's look at this load next scene function. This is like the main script. This is the global script that we're using. So as we said, we have the floor scenes. This is the array which stores all of the different floors that the elevator will go between. So this load next scene function gets called when the player presses the button. And as you can see, there are two types of transitioning functions that I've implemented. And I'll talk about them a little bit later as the difference between them. But let's just look at how I, loading the scene and moving it in front of the elevator. So the way I've done it is, of course, we might have a current scene loaded already. So the first step was to get rid of the already loaded floor. And this is what gets it done. I save the current scene in a variable, a reference to it, and I check if there's something in it and it's a valid scene, then just remove it. And this is just a safety net. If there's anything left over in the scene container, then that will be removed also. Let me just show you. So in game, this is the main node. This is like the whole game controller and everything in the game. The elevator is also here in my implementation, but you could do it otherwise if you want to spawn the elevator dynamically or something like that. So the new floors and other things with it will be spawned here in this scene container. So I know exactly where it is and things like that. So I check if there's a current scene and then I free it. And you don't have to worry about this line. I'll explain it in just a second. And then I grab the new floor from the floor scenes array. And there's this current floor index which keeps tracks of where we are currently in the array. So I grab the current floor and I instantiate it. And these are just for calculating time. You don't have to worry about it. Once I instantiated the new floor, I add it to the scene container, which I also have a reference to. Now we have to move it in front of the elevator. And as I said, in my implementation, we have a little elevator marker, and this is, in function of that elevator marker, we're going to move it in front. But basically this is where the elevator should be once the whole translations and the movings happened. And the way we do that is by taking the whole new floor and changing its position so that it's right here, so that the marker will align with the elevator. So the way we do this is by first getting the elevator from the new floor that we just spawned, getting that node. And actually, it might be better to use here get node or null, because it's a little bit more safe, so the whole application won't crash if there's no elevator marker in the new scene. You might be asking, what is this get tree wait process frame? To be honest, I'm not sure. I read that it's safer to do it this way, so that to make sure that everything is loaded correctly. And if there's no elevator marker, we just return. And then this is where the whole translation happens. This is where the new floor gets brought to the elevator, so that the elevator marker aligns with where the elevator is. And the way I've done this is by changing the new floor's global transform, and I take the elevator's transform, multiply it with the global transform, and the inverse of the marker. To be honest, I don't know what's going on here. I took this from the internet, and it works. You probably, you might be able to do it in a more simpler way in your implementation, but This one works for me. I'm not sure exactly how it works. And also this line here, I'm changing the player's global Y position, so his up and down position, because sometimes the player would, have like a sudden jump when he transitioned. So I saved his up and down position before the transition, and then just set it after the whole new scene got loaded. So the player would remain at the same Y position after the load. And then I just save the new floor as the current scene, because this is the current scene, we just loaded it, this is the scene that is right now in front of the elevator. We update the current floor index, so we go one step ahead in the array, so we know what to load next time. And then I emit a signal to, I use this some part of the game, it's not that very important. And also I use a modulo operator, so just to make sure we don't go out of the bounds of the array and we don't get an error. So why do I have two functions for this? This is basically the meat of it. It works completely fine. The reason that I have two functions, because maybe you don't want to change everything on a floor once you go to a next level. You see, maybe you have the elevator right here, and you have the map. And maybe on the next level you just want to add a chair, or you want to add a character, but you don't want to change the whole floor. So, maybe you just want to get rid of these and, put in something else. But the floor remains the same, the things that are not changing between the floors. This is just a little optimization so that you don't, get rid of, free the whole map, spawn it again, and free the whole map again, spawn it again, because, that's pointless work. Why not just keep it there all the time? And this is exactly the thing that I done. I created this scene called floor base. This is basically the things that are not changing in between the floors. So for example, the decorations, the walls, the floor, everything. And I want to keep this in game between the different floors. So this is why I have two functions. One function is for when I want to change to a whole completely different scene. For example, this outside scene. I might want to just come here and change it to this. And I don't want to keep this base floor there. And at other times, I might want to keep something there, this floor base, for example, but only, maybe spawn something in here on the next level. So the way I implemented it in code is in this load next scene function, which gets called from the elevator. So this is what gets called when the player presses the button. I check which floor am I on. So, in my game, I keep track of on which floor will I have a completely new scene, or on which ones will I keep the floor base on and only change things inside it. So, for example, maybe if I want on level 7 or level 5 something different, I could call a different function. But in your game, again, it might be completely different. So the way I done it, if I just want this basic floor, if I want to keep this and just change things inside of it, I call the load next floor function. And you don't have to worry about the parameter. This is if the player pressed the to continue the game button. It's not important right now. So in the load next floor, I do the same things, free the current scene if there is one, and then I check if it's the first load. Because yes, we want to keep that thing in there, the basic floor. We want to keep this in there and not change it between the floors, but at some point we got to load it in the scene. So, and we do that the first time we load this, floor thing. First time this function gets called, we load the map that we want to keep there between the floors. So we load it. I add it to the scene, and this true here is force readable name. And the reason I do this is that if I go to another level and I want to delete this, I can find it by its name. And then the rest is basically the same. I get the new scene, I load it. If it's the first load, of course, let me just get some space here. On the first load, the base floor, the thing that you don't want to change, might not be right in front of the elevator. So again, we translate it based on the elevator marker as explained before. we also do the transformation for a new floor. So for example, this is what the floors look like. Because since I've already spawned this one, this is already there on the first load. On the second load, for example, I only load, the doors, the lights, some different objects and things like that. Every time we want to load these extra things. But we want to load the base floor only on the first load. And then, yet again, the same thing with the global position. We set the currency into the new floor. We set the, is first load to false, since we called it already. Actually, I could also do this in the if statement, so we don't set it every time. Putting it here could be actually a little bit better. We update the floor index, and that's basically, it's not important. It's the, if the player chooses to continue the game where he left off. So yeah, that's basically it. And if, you want to load a completely new scene, this is, for me, the load new scene function does that. And as I said, in the scene container, I save the, the floor base, the things that is not changing between the floors, with a unique name. So, first of all, I get that base floor based on that unique name, and if there is that place, if I get it, get node or null, so the game doesn't crash, it just gives a null pointer if the floor base is not present in the scene tree, and if it's there, I just remove it, and that's it. And then it's the same thing again. So yeah, that's about it. Creating a functional elevator. Of course, the whole animations, the door closing and all that, you can do that with an animation player. If you haven't seen this animation player yet, I highly recommend you to check it out. It's a very powerful tool. You can basically change any of the properties of a node with this animation player. It's very powerful, so I highly recommend you to check this out also. So yeah, that's about it for the video. If you have any questions, please leave a comment, or if you're interested about other parts of the game, you can leave a comment also. So thanks for watching, and hope you have learned something new in this video. Goodbye.